we came back to Australia and we kind of went to all our friends going, we've got to do this here. This is a really great thing, because it was genuinely, it was exciting in the sense that people had, you kind of heard a lot of people talking about how you could use the internet for improving democracy, but it all seemed like a total bunch of kind of bullshit. Like, people talk about it, but you could never actually see an example of anything that actually seemed to be effective. And this was the first thing that I'd seen where I went, oh my God, this is how it should be.
And that was Matthew Landauer of the Open Australia Foundation, and I'm James Purser, and this is Purser Explores the World. Matthew Landauer and Henare Deegan are two more people who embody the super DIY ethic I've spoken about before. Though in this case, they're not hacking on hardware, they're hacking on the process of government, cracking it open and making it more accessible to people who might otherwise be put off by the monolithic entity known as the government. Through projects such as OpenAustralia.org, planning alerts and election leaflets, Matthew, Henare and the others at the Open Australia Foundation have led by example when it comes to the idea of open government. Not only have they created these easy-to-use tools, they've shown the way for others both within and without the public service, by proving that it can be done. The Open Australia Foundation recently launched a new project called Right to Know, a website dedicated to bringing public freedom of information requests together so that the people can track them and also benefit from the information released in a public way. So I thought I would catch up with Matthew and Henare and have a chat about Open Australia, Right to Know, and what they've learnt over the past few years. Unfortunately, we weren't able to actually all sit down together and have a nice little round table discussion, but I think we did pretty well nonetheless. Let's start with the man behind the whole Open Australia idea in the first place, Matthew Landauer.
Well, it started with a project more than an idea of a kind of a foundation. So the first project that we built was OpenAustralia.org, and that all came about because Kat, who's one of the co-founder, and we were living in London, and we went quite by accident to this sort of techie, nerdy event, which was, I guess, sort of close to what a bar camp type event is now. And there was sort of very eclectic mix of things. But one of the things was people talking about use of the web for political stuff. And there was this organization, or a group of people, I don't think it was an organization at that point, a group of people that showed off this site that they were launching called theyworkforyou.com, which is basically the UK version of what Open Australia ended up being. And I didn't really realize that we were at this kind of historic launch, because They Work For You really was the starting point for this organization called My Society in the UK. And we came back to Australia and we kind of went to all our friends going, we've got to do this here. This is a really great thing, because it was genuinely, it was exciting in the sense that people had, you kind of heard a lot of people talking about how you could use the internet for improving democracy, but it all seemed like a total bunch of kind of bullshit. Like, people talk about it, but you could never actually see an example of anything that actually seemed to be effective. And this was the first thing that I'd seen where I went, oh my God, this is how it should be. And so it really just started with the desire to do this project, and I got a little bit of charity leave from the place I was working at, and I sort of built the first prototype of the site in about a week, and really the foundation as a thing kind of grew out of the realization that we really needed to make this thing a kind of more serious endeavor. We needed to set up a charity so that we could keep this thing going, so we could grow things around it, and we could build something sustainable. And that's really how it all came about. It was sort of happenstance. It was like just happened. It was the realization that it needed to be done, and I happened to be there.
What did the site do?
Well, it took the federal Hansard, which is the sort of the transcript of what politicians say in Parliament, and it took that off the official government website where that was displayed in a very dry format, and it republishes it in a way which is much more about how real people want to use this information. So okay, that's very abstract, but in practical terms, what it means is, for instance, most people probably don't even remember who their representatives are or who their senators are. So they can just put in their postcode, and it will tell them who represents them in Parliament. And they can then get to a page that shows stuff about that person, lots of information about them, recent speeches that they made, how often they talk in Parliament, and links off to the speeches so that they can read them and get a sense of who this person is and what they say. And if they want to, they can also sign up to email alerts and get notified whenever their representative talks in Parliament. So the email alerts are sort of a key thing where you can follow things that you're interested in, and you don't have to have your knowledge of the goings on of Parliament mediated necessarily by media, or you don't have to go and personally troll through the Hansard and read everything. You can just get the bits that you need, and so it's really about taking this sort of dead transcript document and making it alive by making it useful to you, to how real people want to use it.
Now, Open Australia that was your first project, and it was very successful. But you went on to create a couple more, Planning Alerts, which I believe is basically allows you to keep track of all the development applications in your area, or something similar.
Yeah.
And what was the leaflets one?
Electionleaflets.org.au, and that was a sort of crowdsourcing of the election leaflets that you get in your mailbox during elections, and the idea behind that is that the sort of the mainstream media puts most of their attention on sort of the federal issues of the battle of the big parties, but what actually goes on is that on a local level, parties send out these leaflets and put them in people's mailboxes, and because they happen at a local level, they happen largely invisibly to the mainstream media, and so there's a long-standing history, and both in Australia and internationally, of election leaflets being used in quite sort of dodgy ways, where things like for instance, a party makes a promise to one electorate, and then the neighboring electorate, it promised something that is in direct conflict with it. And so each local area thinks they're getting this promise of something that's great for their area, but if you take those two bits of information together, you realize that actually that neither of those things would ever happen because they conflict. And so the idea is create a website where people take the election leaflets that they get in the mail and scan them or send them in to us, and then it all goes up on a website. And this happens before the election. sort of live as it's going on, and then people can look through the election leaflets that people have received in different areas and the different parties have sent, and sort of get a picture and make their own judgment about how they should vote, and use that to help guide them. So it's really both a sort of way to inform people in a better way about what's going on, but also to really make it difficult for parties and organizations to play kind of dodgy tricks with election leaflets.
So you're shining a light into dark places.
Yes, or places that normally don't get the attention that they should deserve, really.
There seems to be a common theme amongst all the projects, is this opening up a political process or these obscure political or governmental processes to more scrutiny and much more transparency.
Yeah, and the ultimate aim is not just to give people information just out of curiosity, but that it actually directly informs people's engagement with their communities, with their politicians, with their governments. And so it should be stuff that allows them to take action based on what they find out. So for instance, sort of one small example of that is with planning alerts. It makes it easier to find out what development applications are going on have gone through in your local area. But what you can do in a lot of councils as well, a lot of areas, is directly through planning alerts. If you get a notification of a development application, you can just go immediately to the page and immediately put in a comment and put in essentially what becomes a formal submission back to the council. And so the idea is that we make it also easier to feed back into the process of giving feedback. And it's all about making people that wouldn't necessarily consider themselves to be political or just to kind of get involved and see that they can make a difference to their community and to their area, and perhaps they get involved in other parts of either the political process or parts of their other parts of their community.
Now, the new project that you guys have just launched, Right to Know, that's sort of taking that whole getting engaged in the political process another step forward, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Australia was one of the very early countries to have a freedom of information law, and every country that's passed freedom of information laws has pretty much done it because with the idea that it improves democracy, with the idea that it gives ordinary people the power to ask government for documents that they can then use to help understand the decisions that have made within government or how government is doing things, with the purpose that they can then use that to better engage with government, in the sense that they can use that information to point out things that could be done better, and also to congratulate the things that are done well.
So what is Right to Know? What is it? What does it do?
Okay, in simplest terms, it makes it very easy for ordinary people without any knowledge of legal craziness to make freedom of information requests. If you've never made a freedom of information request before Right to Know, it would have been very hard to know where to start. But with Right to Know, you can go to this website, and it will lead you through the process. It will help you make the request. It will give you the right information at the right time. We have lots of help and documentation written to sort of in simple, plain English that kind of explains what you need to do at every stage, and you don't have to know it all at once. You can just read the bits when they're relevant to you. So it's about making it easy for ordinary people to get information from government that is of interest to them, and that's the sort of the primary aim. There's a sort of secondary aim where in the process of making a request through Right to Know, it actually opens up the whole process of someone making a request and getting a response from an agency and making it visible to everybody. And there's a few different reasons for that. One of the important ones is that if you go to the website as someone new to freedom of information, you can look at all the other requests that have been made, and you can understand from other people and learn from other people how to make a good freedom of information request. And also you can look at all the other information that's been released as a result of all the other people making freedom of information requests. So that's one reason. There's another reason, which is that if agencies are late in replying or are overly I guess legalistic in the way that they handle requests, then that's there for everybody to see because everybody sees those responses. So it gives us also, I guess, as a society, we then have a better visibility on how the whole of freedom of information is working, and so we can use that to better assess what's working about it and what isn't. Because I think what happens now, there's a freedom of information review going on, a sort of whole legislative review of the Freedom of Information Act, and you've already seen a few little bit of sort of buzzing back and forth of people talking about either agencies talking about the sorts of requests that the general public make, or the general public making statements about the way the agencies handle that. And the truth is that we don't really know what's going on because nobody has the full picture. Nobody sees how these things are really happening. And so it's all just sort of hearsay. And that's something that needs to change.
As I speak, Matthew and his partner should be enjoying a well-earned holiday far from the maddening crowds. Hanare Deegan came to the Open Australia Foundation soon after the launch of the original Open Australia website. Since then, he has been one of the strongest advocates for the organisation and has been instrumental in developing tools such as the Planning Alert Service, which allows users to track development applications in their area. Hanare was closely involved with the development of the Right to Know service, and we pick up the conversation with his reaction to the Labor government refusing to support the launch of Right to Know based on the fact that there had been a hackfest and a media report that one of the aims was to shame public servants.
Yeah, very interesting, that one. We put together a blog post, and as we said there, we think it's a simple misunderstanding, not least because they were scared of the Hackfest that I ran a couple of weeks ago. And of course, you and I both know, and many people would know that, the government's run Hackfest before. That term has, has been been de-risked or whatever you'd like to call it. I'm talking about GovHack, for example. And that was one of their stated reasons for not supporting it, which I was surprised about. And the other one being that it's kind of new, but obviously the Open Australia Foundation has a history, and so we're surprised that they didn't actually, they took something from the press rather than asking us, which was a bit of a shame. But that's all right. We think that we'll be able to move forward now with that, and hopefully now that we've had a chance to explain it, hopefully the government will be able to see their way to support it.
Well, I've sent off an email asking for some clarification about that because it was slightly confusing. The other reason that they gave was that they thought you were trying to shame public servants.
Yeah, so that was actually from an article that was written. It was the journalist's interpretation, and in fact, he even came on Twitter and said, "Oh, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to give that impression," and I believe he's organising a clarification as we speak.
All right, well, as I said, I'll chase it up, see if I can get a response from the senator in question, and if I do, I'll include that in the episode.
That would be fantastic.
Let's get to Right to Know. You were integral in building the system. What were some of the challenges that you faced?
Well, that's really interesting. The Open Australia Foundation has had a real interest in doing something like Right to Know for a long time. And I was really lucky to be taken over to the UK by My Society, the people that built the open source software that's at the core of Right to Know, for Aliver Telecon, which was earlier this year, which was just amazing. It was a tiny little conference, but so focused. There was 50 delegates from 30 or 40 odd countries, which is pretty amazing. It gives you an idea of the scale and the breadth of the people that were there. Each of those jurisdictions, in each of the different countries, there's different challenges that they faced. And I'd always known from the start that Australia was going to be a reasonably unique proposition, because we've had pretty awesome right to know kind of access to information laws for a long time now, but they're wildly underused. So our challenges are very different to, say, somewhere like some of the other countries where they don't even have access to information laws, incredibly, and yet they're still setting up sites like this so that they can try and show that, the government should be doing that. So I thought that, I think that our biggest challenge in running the site will be getting over that kind of, or changing that culture of making people aware that they do have this right to know and they can exercise it, and it's not a bad thing. We should be allowed to do that. But back to what your actual question was about making the site, it's the same thing with all of the sites that we build. There's all these little unexpected things that people don't come across with laws and things like that because they're not putting them in computer code. Programming is pretty unforgiving. It's ones and zeros, on or off. And so really simple things like agencies have 30 days to respond. Simple, right? Mm-hmm. Well, what does 30 days mean? Are we talking about calendar days or are we talking about weekdays? Oh, and if we're talking about weekdays, we're talking about calendar days, because that's actually what it is, that takes into account public holidays. This is federal. So what public holidays? Are we talking about federally gazetted public holidays and that's it? Or is it the public holidays where the agency is? Or is it public holidays where the requester is? Who knows? So it's really simple things like that we kind of come up against and go, wow, what does it really mean? And even when you read the laws, you can't entirely tell. So it's always funny little things like that are a huge struggle. And another big one was working out what agencies are FOIable.
Mm-hmm. And how many agencies do you actually have?
So we've got 361 authorities in there right now. I'm looking at it, so that's why I don't know it off the top of my head that well. And so we've got 361 authorities. So what that means is it's not so. Bodies that are FOIable aren't just things like departments. Because it's funny, because you can actually FOI ministers and things. So for pretty much every department, you've actually got a minister that you can FOI as well. And they're quite different things that you'd ask a minister versus asking the department. Most people want to ask departments. And then there's a bunch of authorities as well. So like the Murray-Darling Basin Authority is its own entity. And there's a bunch of other ones as well that we've actually we've taken an active decision to include some agencies that are actually excluded from FOI, so things like ASIO and things, because we think that as a public body they should be answerable to the people. So we've actually included them, even though they're not strictly FOIable, and we hope that. For we're not talking about national security information, but for maybe for budget information or something like that they'd voluntarily answer those FOI requests.
So a bit of pressure, public pressure, rather than actually hoping that they'll give you what you want.
Yeah, well, we do hope that they'd respond to those maybe less kind of controversial requests, and hopefully over time that can actually change the laws behind it as well. Because people, because we'll be able to do that demonstration of this isn't, it isn't all bad, and people will be able to see that, oh, right, a blanket exemption for a government agency that has tens of millions of dollars in funding that's probably not a good thing. Maybe we should rethink that, and maybe we should be doing this on a case-by-case basis, for when people are asking for sensitive information.
And what's been the reaction? Okay, leaving aside the political reaction from that motion, what's been the reaction from the agencies themselves?
Oh, really phenomenal! They're so good. I'm so impressed. Like I have a small love affair with government agencies now. We've had some really beautiful responses. So we've been in pre-release for about 6 weeks or so now. And on the first day when we actually opened it up to our pre-release testers, which was a group of journalists and activists and FOI gurus and things, that first day, one of the emails went out and there was a technical problem, and we got an email almost immediately from that agency saying, "Oh, look, there's a problem. This email didn't go through."
Mm-hmm.
And so we were able to look into that problem and fix it, and it was just mind-blowing. So they were helping from day one. And since then, we've even had agencies asking how they can make sure that their documents get on to Right to Know. So they've actually asked requesters, hey, can you make sure that these documents get on Right to Know? So they've been really, really helpful, and I think they've been really positive about it.
That is, Open Australia, the foundation, has been running for a number of years now, and that sort of attitude has shifted quite a lot from when you guys first started, hasn't it?
Oh, I don't know. I think that what happens is that when you explain something like Right to Know or even OpenAustralia.org, right back, the first site that we ever built, Matthew would go around and he'd explain the site to people, and people would be like, "Oh, there's this problem, there's that problem. Oh, have you thought of this?" Or they just wouldn't get it. They'd be like, "Well, why would you bother doing something like that?" And I think that is like almost everything we do is like that, because it's quite new and different, and so it's difficult to understand when it's a concept. But when it's a real practical thing that's in front of someone, they can go, I get it. That makes a lot of sense. Planning alerts is an awesome example of that, because so many councils, like we're they have copyright notices on that data when we're scraping it, but yet we have them calling us up and saying, "Hey, how can we get our data on there?" They're enthusiastic, they understand it, and it's the same thing with Right to Know. I think that people see it and they go, "Hey, this is a really good idea. This could even replace my disclosure logs," for example.
You've got the federal set up and you're just starting to get that rolling. Has there been any interest from state level or even local government level for this sort of information?
Oh, we're really keen to expand it to state and local government. It's actually just a technical reason why we didn't launch with a broader states and local government, really. Mm-hmm. We're actually the first jurisdiction in the world to use this open source software, which is deployed in about 8 or so other countries, I think. We're the first jurisdiction in the world to come up against this problem where the difference between the laws between federal and state is such that we need to work out a way for the system to be able to cope with things like different response times and stuff like that, and also different names of the laws. So, as far as I'm concerned, that's already showing a problem. Why is there such a discrepancy in access to information laws between the states and federal? So we'll be working on that technical problem, hopefully very soon, and I'd say probably early in the new year we'll be launching for the other states and things.
Sweet.
I'm really keen for that to happen, because like all of the sites that we do with Open Australia, we don't want people shouldn't have to kind of think about, why, or like that. They shouldn't have to learn about why laws are like they are. It should just work. And so like planning alerts, if you sign up for an alert, we don't say, let's send you all of the development applications from Marrickville Council, but not send you the ones from Sydney, even though it's right across the road. In my example, in my last house that I was living in, it was literally Sydney City Council was across the road and I was in Marrickville Council. But what we do is we just, send you them, because you don't care what council you're in. You quite often don't even know. And it should be the same with Right to Know. You shouldn't have to think, this is a state one. I can't use Right to Know. So that's why we're really keen to expand it, so that you just come to the site. If you want to know anything about any, government, it doesn't matter what level, it just works.
Now, you've had a lot of media attention, probably much more than, say, for when you release planning alerts or even Open Australia. How's you been handling that?
So this is actually it's some of the hardest thing to do with these sites is getting the word out. And we did a pretty good job with election leaflets. So Open Australia was the first one, and so obviously, we were learning about it then. In fact, I wasn't involved in the launch of that one. With planning alerts, there was some seed funding from the Government 2.0 Task Force, and they actually stipulated that it had to be launched by the end of a calendar year. And so planning alerts got launched at Christmas. The worst time that you can ever launch a website. Yep. It was really like that. And planning alerts was a huge struggle to get that, get the traffic up and stuff like that. And now, but Matthew put a huge amount of work into that. Optimizing the website, and we because we've taken it so far since that initial prototype. With all of the pages now for every single development application. I mean, you Google an address in Australia, and planning alerts is almost always in the top 10 because, quite often there's been a development application for an address. And so there was a huge struggle to get the traffic up on that, and now that is by far and away our most popular website. And then with election leaflets, we put a lot of effort into trying to get some media coverage around that, and that was it was an active decision, and it's the same that what we've done with Right to Know is trying to get the word out there. In fact, for election leaflets in the 2010 election, the first one we ran it for, where we got about 700 leaflets uploaded from around the country, we actually went to the Lindsay electorate where they had the pamphlet scandal, mm-hmm. and we did a leaflet drop there. We printed up these leaflets that said, "This is not an election leaflet," and we went around and letterboxed, as a bit of fun and mm-hmm. also to make those people aware, but also to get the media interested. And so with Right to Know, we've been pushing really hard to try and get the word out there. I think we've done pretty well so far. I mean, mentioned in the Senate, that's pretty cool.
I should point out that I attempted to contact the Senator's office about her statement in Parliament. However, at the time I'm putting this together, I haven't actually received any response. If I do, I shall put it up on the Angry Beanie website, and I'll throw it in as an addendum to a future episode. What I'll also do is leave a link to the relevant bit of Hansard so you can read the full statement of why the Labor Party didn't want to support Right to Know on the show notes, and that'll be, of course, via the Open Australia site. Open government is often viewed as one of those earnest endeavours by a lot of people. Something to be supported, but something that's really so far down the priority list that nothing ever gets done. Or what does get done tends to be for show or swept away by a light breeze. People like Matthew and Henare and many others are proving that with a little bit of lateral thinking, in combinations with the new tools we have at our fingertips, open government can move beyond the nice to have to being part of the essential, part of the core mission. If you want to find out more about each of the projects mentioned in this episode, I've added links to each in the show notes. Okay, that's it for episode 12 of Purser Explores the World. Don't forget, you can keep up with all the PETW news via our website at angrybeanie.com, on Twitter at angrybeanie, on Facebook at facebook.com/angrybeanie, and finally on Google+. But we don't have a nice shiny URL for that. I'm waiting for Google to tell me how to verify that so I can do it. Anyway, I shall see you in 2 weeks' time.